What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
Metaphor of I love Mike. I have used it 15 ways from Sunday. I use it all the time.
Tell them what you're talking about if you remember, and I'll edit it if I need to. So
let's see if I remember this correctly. So we were talking about leadership specifically. At the time, we were talking about board service, and you're somebody who I don't know if you can even count the number of boards that you've been on. So I look to you as a mentor about board service as I continue to serve on boards. And you were talking about, in the context of organizations that have more ideas than they have resources, and how to balance that as a board member when board members are coming in with ideas, but what you need is action. And you said to me, the important thing for a leader to do is not to light the spark, but to fan the flame. Mm-hmm. And I really had to sit with that because, Mike, I am a fire starter. In our podcast episode, I've got 3 new business ideas, right? It's constant for me. I love it. And I feel like I'm helping. It's like the leaders that you mentioned already who are like, I need to solve problems, right? I need to come up with the solutions. And yet one of the most important things that I can do, and I've really learned this from listening to your wisdom on this, is not bring up the ideas myself, but ask questions, learn more to help the people around me think of ideas. And then when they bring one up, really fan that flame so that they feel, okay, I'm excited, I'm empowered, I'm ready to do this. And that's what it looks like to have that effectively distributed leadership across a board organization.
Yeah, well stated. Well stated. You captured everything that was in my heart. And where that came from, Sarah, for me, was, as I mentioned, the book that I'm working on right now, Secrets for Hiring Right. What happens is, I think as leaders, what we have to do is we have to go and find people and collect people who already have the spark inside of them. See, I made the mistake of walking around with my Bic light or whatever, trying to go and create a spark, right?
Yes.
And try to get somebody motivated. And I realized, and maybe a better way is I'm starting to realize that I got to collect people around me that there's a spark inside of them, but what they need is somebody fanning the flame. Yeah. That's what they need. And when you do that, it turns into a roaring fire. And so we have to do a better job of looking for people who have that spark inside of them, that they're bringing that energy. I mean, that's when I connected with you, I was interested in having this discussion because it was really easy to see. You got the spark. I didn't have to go and say, well, let me light her up and see if we can have a good time on our podcast. That's inside of you. But all I've had to do today is sit there and just fan the flame and turn you loose and watch this exuberance come out of you.
And I'm lucky because you're somebody who does your research. You understand how to look into somebody's background and interests and find those things, those questions that might help to fan the flame. I will say one thing I've learned, I didn't know this early in my career. I thought that there were folks with sparks and folks without. And what I think I've learned instead is that some of us are lucky in that we get to work in an area that speaks to the things that light us up. And some of us aren't so lucky. But I have not yet met somebody who, without, the right questions, can't be shown to have that spark. Everybody's got one. And I think even a book like How to Win Friends and Influence People from, when was that written? The 1930s through to now. At the end of the day, every book about how to influence and connect with people, to me, it comes down to, can you be curious enough to really listen, make the person feel safe around you to the point where they begin to talk about the things that truly matter to them. I think everybody's got it. And the good leaders can ask the right questions and find that within each person that works with them. I think one of the things I want to mention based on our conversation about engagement so far is that it doesn't take that long. A lot of times the leaders I work with, I talk about the importance of listening, connecting with their employees, finding that spark within each employee, and they get overwhelmed and they say, I already have enough to do and my calendar is really full of meetings and I don't have time for any of that. It doesn't take that long. When I connect with a student as they're walking into my classroom and I've got my roster there, I've taken little notes next to each student's name. I know where they're from. I've heard them mention different things. And so as somebody walks in and I look at the roster and I note that they're there, if I make a little comment about, oh, right, so you must be pretty happy with that AFC championship win because I know that that's a team. I mean, that small comment, they're going to remember that.
Yeah.
It's not something that takes a lot of time.
Yeah. As long as you're intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So we're back to that. Is what's your intention now? What's my intention? Because it's um, our intentionality. When we're intentional about something, what it does is it releases our reticular activator. Anybody who's been with me on any of these know I talk about this a lot because when I uncovered that term, that's the antenna we have in our brain that says, this is important. When I bought my daughter's first car, her silver Hyundai Elantra, I thought we both thought it's a very unusual car. We haven't seen much of them. Well, I drive to work on Monday and I'm in a sea of Hyundai Elantras. Everybody must have had a big
Yeah.
sale over the weekend. What you're describing is
You're just seeing it now.
it's that
Yeah.
same thing. But what happens is if I'm intentional and I have a connection with these people on my team, and I'm intentional about what do I know about them, what do I need to learn about them,
Yeah.
then what happens? Opportunities will present itself
That's
for
right.
me to be able to connect. Or I'll be intentional. What do I want to know about it? What do I want to know in that direction?
Mm-hmm.
It's there's somebody I spoke with once who said, write a list of the 10 top people on your team and then answer these questions. And the questions had nothing to do with business.
Yeah.
Had to do with wife, children, where they went to school,
Yep.
hobbies, where they went on their last vacation. And you're not going to sit down and interview them.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if I know that these are things I want to know, what do I not know? Then the next time I talk to them, I'll ask them about their dog.
That's right.
Whatever. It's in being intentional in care.
It's
So
being intentional. Yeah.
I can't turn you loose without having you go down a different road. And the road is you're also an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So you have you do not just walk the halls of academia. You do not just go out and consult global brands, but you're out there creating, leading, taking steps. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial venture and what you've learned from that journey.
I love talking about this because I don't hear a version of my story in most of the books that I read about entrepreneurship. So I try to be really loud about it because if I can encourage even one person, when I started out in entrepreneurship, I just loved the kind of work that I was doing, that I was studying in graduate school, and I wanted to do more of it. And so I started a company. But when I filled out that LLC paperwork and it asked me what my title was, I paused and I wasn't comfortable writing CEO. It was too charged of a title. I was from academia. I'd never taken a single business class. I didn't know a P&L. I didn't feel like I could own that. I just wanted to do the work. So I wrote president. And Mike, that's because I had been president of my college lacrosse club. And so I
Ooh,
felt like
you can own
I've
that.
I've been president before. I'll just put president. And it's still on my LLC paperwork. But I think at this point, some 15 years later, I'm so much more comfortable using titles like CEO and things like that. So, what changed? How do you go from somebody who has no experience in entrepreneurship, no experience in business, is really starting a company because she's interested in the work? How do I get to here? I'm proud to say that at this point, I'm in the North Carolina Women Business Owners Hall of Fame. And it's not because I had natural business prowess. So, what did I do? What was the difference maker? And for me, it was that very early on, I joined a number of associations related to entrepreneurship and specifically related to women in entrepreneurship. One of them was the National Association of Women Business Owners, the Greater Raleigh chapter, which has been around for over 40 years. It was established when banks were still allowed to require that women business owners have male relatives co-sign on any kind of business documentation. So if you were going to get a loan or establish a business, a bank could require that you have your husband, your father, if neither of those were available, your high school age son to sign on those documents. That didn't become illegal until the late 80s. And so the chapter that I'm a part of here, there were women in this area that were advocating on Capitol Hill for that change. So it's an organization, and I mention all that because it's an organization that is really focused on advocacy and focused on supporting the unique challenges that women business owners may face. And it was through that organization that I met folks who could understand the challenges that I was facing. And the stories that I have, I would love to write a book one day about what it was like to be starting my family, changing a diaper, using my elbow to mute the call so that nobody could hear what was going on in the background, and then coming back online. Just the balance of all that was really challenging. But I had an organization, a group of women who also knew what that was like. And a number of those women continue to be friends. They've been mentors to me, and I've called them at some of my most challenging times. And so I'm really open about that story because I would hope that anyone who sees other entrepreneurs, reads the great books by Walter Isaacson or other authors who help to chronicle what great entrepreneurial leaders are doing, I hope that they also know that it doesn't have to look like that. They don't have to sound like famous entrepreneurs they know. It's more about having a passion for what you want to do and then finding people who are also doing it so that you can share in their challenges and learn from that.
Yeah, and so when you look at this, the role of the entrepreneur, we were talking this before we got online, it has to do with your a zealot on this subject as I am, is that I don't know what the end result is going to be. I know what I'm trying to make. I don't know how to get there.
Yes.
What happens is if I don't know how to get there, what happens, it creates couch time. It's
Mm.
my image in my head where I go sit on the couch. And I remember when I was out of, I would start up a business and I was working from home. Um, and I found myself not sure what to do. And I actually helped people make career decisions and move. And I realized I wasn't doing the things I was teaching. And I
Uh-huh.
still remember that I had to tell myself, Mike, get off the couch. And it became part of my
Oh, I love that.
phraseology, get off the couch.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where I was going and I know where I was headed, but I had to get off the couch in order to make that happen. You
Yeah.
believe, as I do, that steps is how I measure success. And it's the key to successful journey. So as we wrap this thing up, share with our audience why that's so important, what you've learned through both your studies and more important, your walk.
So important. The steps. So for me, when you say steps, here's what I picture. I'm, I'm working on a goal and I know what I want. And so I start to imagine the steps, the individual things that are going to get me there. And then I have to make a choice. Natural tendencies that I have are go to the library, find a book about it, listen to podcasts about it, journal about it.
Mm.
All of those things are ways that I procrastinate. And I had to learn that. I'm not saying that they aren't important and you can't learn from them, but for me, those are ways that I procrastinate. Those are ways that I sit on the couch, to use your metaphor, and brainstorm and think. And here's the wonderful thing about that space. In that space, the things that I want are possibilities, right? They're beautiful possibilities. I haven't messed up yet. They're things I'm going to do eventually. As soon as I get off the couch, as soon as I put my first Instagram reel out there, or send the first edition of my new newsletter, or hit record on my new podcast, or whatever it is, as soon as I take real action, that possibility is shattered. It is now real. It's something that I can poke at and analyze and notice the flaws of, and that's painful. And it's the most important thing that I do. If I live in possibility, the thing never actually exists. And so I have to get off the couch. For me, getting off the couch, the phrase that I use is just ship it. And that's a famous kind of entrepreneurial phrase. And it just means like get it out the door. I love perfection. I am a perfectionist. I would love to do everything perfectly. I would never get anything done. There
Hmm.
is not a single Instagram reel or LinkedIn post or podcast episode that I've done that I'm like, nailed 100% of that. 10 out of 10, no notes, right? Everything has something that I could have improved, but that's how I learn. And if I waited until it was perfect, it would never get done. And so, what I share with entrepreneurs all the time is whatever it is that you want, you just need to get started. I know that there's this temptation to wait until it's perfect, but you've got to put yourself out there. And I would rather put myself out there, start, mess up, learn, try again, and then be 10 steps ahead than wait until it's perfect. So it's been the most important lesson that I've learned. When I talk to students and they're like, I want to, be on social the way that you are. What tips do you have for videos? I always say, you know what? Go do 50 posts and come back to me and I'll give you a free hour. I'll consult with you for an hour. I'll go look over all your content and we'll talk about it. And I never have anyone take me up on that. Never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Sarah, I knew this would be, I should have booked 4 hours, not one. So it's been so much fun listening to you share your journey, your wisdom, spoken to large-scale organizations, and just as important, in my mind, even more important, this entrepreneurial mindset that you need to have, whether you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, which is that person working within a company that has to have a sense of ownership for their role. I mean, you've shared so much, and I hope that our listeners today, whenever you're pondering over what we talked about, is really hang on to Sarah's challenge of intentionality,
Well,
being
and Mike,
intentional.
before we hang up, can I just say on behalf of everyone who gets a chance to listen to you, the way that you approach leadership and the way that you have these conversations and recognize the value in others, even though you are, if not a expert, the expert, you still open yourself up to learning. You still speak into others' stories and highlight the nuggets there as if these aren't things that you already know, when in many cases, I think that you do. It's such an example for the rest of us. And I think gives us hope, because so many leaders who get to your stage kind of become closed off, and they get the expertise sickness of no longer being able to absorb from others and kind of always preaching down. And you are just the opposite of whatever that is. And it's such a light. It adds so much warmth into the world through all the conversations you have. So thank you, sincerely. Thank you for that.
You've been just a joy to talk to. I'm humbled by your comment. Thank you. So in the show notes, if you're looking to connect up with Sarah, you can find her on LinkedIn. In the show notes, you'll see information about how to reach out to her through our website. And I suggest you that I'm putting something in specifically in the show notes. She has a TED Talk. And why don't you, as we wrap, why don't you tell them about your TED Talk, about the topic to set up as a teaser to make them want to go to it, because I think the topic and what you share on this is just powerful.
Thank you. I'm very proud of this TEDx talk. It's not even been out a year and we already have over 200,000 views. So I hope your listeners go and check it out. It's how to achieve your goals with a single page. We're knocking down some of that procrastination that you and I have already mentioned on this episode, getting some of that clarity that we talked about at the top of the episode and how important that is. And we can do all of that with just a single piece of paper, just a single piece of paper worth of planning. And we walk through how to do that in less than 15 minutes. So go check it out.
I love it. And see that in the show business world, that's called the hook. And with that, yeah, Sarah, have an amazing day. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.